Good afternoon, everyone. Someone responded, good afternoon, everyone. Did you all have a good lunch? Yes. And are you having a really productive and valuable and enjoyable forum? Yes. Excellent. Well, let's try and continue that today. This session is focusing on the 15 by 30 pledge for higher education and what that means. And I've got a fantastic panel here today, but as you can also see, a rather large panel of very eminent people. So as a result, we are asking the panelists to limit their comments to 4 minutes. Behind them on the screen, you will see the pledge that they are making, or their organization is making, and also who they are and what organization they represent. My name is Duncan Ross. I'm the Chief Data Officer for Times Higher Education. I'm not a journalist, so you can say what you like, I won't report it. Times Higher Education believes firmly in the power of higher education to transform people's lives and to transform communities and nations. It's a vital part of the world and a surprisingly large part of the world. Roughly 1.6% of gross world product is spent in higher education. And particularly for refugee students, it offers a route to greater security, of a way that they can actually build up new skills and provide value both to the country they have come from, but also potentially to the country where they are a refugee. We've heard some really interesting things in the forum so far, a couple of them that spring to mind. The first one was, I can't remember who said this, so I apologize for that, but someone said, no one university can do everything, but every university can do something. And that's a really important thing for us to take away with ourselves, that we can all do something, even for those of us who are not universities, because universities can't do this by themselves. They require the support of their communities. They absolutely require the support of their funders, who are often governments, but maybe other bodies, in order to be able to deliver that. Another thing that struck me right at the beginning of the forum was when His Majesty the King of Jordan commented that they have 4.8 million refugees in Jordan. And that's not the largest group of refugees in any country, but it's interesting because I worked out that if Jordan was to have the same ratio of students to universities that we see in the UK, that would mean that you needed 8 universities in Jordan. Not 8 universities in Jordan for all of Jordan, 8 universities in Jordan just for refugees. That's a huge demand, a huge requirement that we need to think about. How can we take actions that will support more students, more refugee students into higher education to give them the skills that will support them? But with that, I'm going to move on to our first panelist, and I'm delighted to introduce Bernice. Bernice, would you like to tell us a little bit about who you are and the organization you represent?
Thank you very much, Mr. Duncan. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Bernice Kula from the Democratic Republic of Congo and a refugee in South Africa, where I did my bachelor's degree in electrical engineering through the Duffy Scholarship, and I am doing my master's degree in computer engineering, cybersecurity, and artificial intelligence at the University of Cagliari in Italy through the UNICO project with UNHCR. And I would advise you to please read up based about UNICO because it's a very important program for refugee students. As a young girl, forced to leave my country of origin to become a refugee in another country, higher education is a dream that most refugees hardly achieve because we find ourselves in places and situations that's beyond our control. It's even more difficult to see young girls in education because of some stereotype that leads to the belief that it is better to have a male child educated than a female child. Higher level education equips individuals with the knowledge, skills, and critical thinking ability necessary to navigate the complexity of the modern world. Through higher level education, refugees learn self-reliance. Self-reliance is the ability to depend on oneself and to be a master of one's destiny. But if someone struggles with identity, they cannot have self-reliance. As a refugee, I felt like everything was taken away from me. I felt like my identity was taken away from me. But through higher level education, I got a chance to find myself, to find my strength, to find my talent, which has given me self-reliance. It is a quality that empowers individuals to chart their course, overcome obstacles, and contribute meaningfully to the society. Self-reliance is not a solitary journey. It's about recognizing our interconnectedness with the world and leveraging our skills and knowledge to make positive contributions. As a self-reliant individual is not an island, but a force of transformation that uplifts others, inspires others, and creates a ripple effect of empowerment. What I'd like to hear today throughout this discussion is how together we realize this commitment to access to higher level education to build opportunities of self-reliance. By achieving the goal of 15 by 30, we will have 15% of refugee youth filled with knowledge and self-reliance that will empower them to shape their destinies and contribute to the betterment of the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bernice. I'm now pleased to turn to Germany. Germany has always been one of the, with the mic on. I'm now pleased to turn to Germany. Germany has always been one of the key supporters of higher education for refugees. They've been doing this through various programs over many years, including the 30-year-old refugee scholarship program known as DAFI. And one of my particular pleasures over the last few days has been bumping into graduates of the DAFI program who talk about how it has transformed their lives and the lives of their families. So I'm very pleased to pass the baton to Philip.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I just spoke actually to some representatives from our foreign ministry, and they told me that the government of Germany is actually very proud of having funded the DAFI scheme for 30 years now. And we can already see the results. I mean, up to now, 24,000 refugees got access to higher education through DAFI in 55 host countries. So this is truly remarkable, and we would like to thank the UNHCR for their very valuable work in this regard and for their excellent implementation of the DAFI scheme. Actually, I'm from the German Academic Exchange Service, and we do have some other programs to support refugee integration into higher education. One of them is the Leadership for Africa program. And another example I would like to mention is the Hilde Domin program for students at risk. And just recently, I participated in a conference of scholarship holders where I talked to several of them. And I just want to share one example after hearing Bernice's contribution, one example to underline how successful these programs actually are. I mean, I spoke to a young guy from Syria. He had to flee to Lebanon when he was 13 years old. In Lebanon, he basically couldn't get a residence status. He couldn't open a bank account. He faced discrimination. Despite of this, he managed to graduate from school with very good grades, and then later on, even from university with a bachelor degree in Lebanon. Then, as a refugee, he was not allowed to work, so he couldn't enter the labor market and could also not finance his master's studies. Going back to Syria was not an option because his hometown was destroyed in the war. But through the DAAD scholarship within the Hilde Domin program, he managed to come to Germany. And now actually he's studying civil engineering at Technical University of Munich. It's a world-class university. So the fact that this man managed to get admitted to this university and got the DAAD scholarship means he's highly talented and highly dedicated. And I think this man is exemplary for other students in support schemes such as Hilde Domin or the DAFI program. These programs select their scholarship holders with independent selection committees. That means also the academic potential plays a very high role in these programs. That means we can guarantee that the funding is going to a qualified number of students. And basically these programs are also very successful because they provide supplementary services such as mentoring, training, or networking. That means the graduation rates are very high of these programs, and many scholarship holders in the end also manage to enter the labor market successfully. This man from Syria I was just referring to, I think in a few years he will earn more than me because he is highly demanded on the labor market. So that's why I want to argue that it's very worth investing in such programs, because in the end we will get out more than we invested. So I want to thank the Foreign Ministry of Germany for further pledging funds for the DAFI program. And actually, I want to encourage other donors to also join in and contribute to the UNHCR's invaluable work. Thank you.
I think that's a very well made point about donors. There is scope, but we need resources to be able to adequately fund this work. Moving on to Mr. Kanzanchi from YTB, would you be able to comment on how and why Turkey, which, as you are probably aware, hosts the largest number of refugees of any country, how have you and why have you invested so heavily in an inclusive higher education approach? What are the factors that motivate that commitment?
Thank you, Duncan. Hi, everyone. Distinguished delegates and colleagues, my institution is responsible for the government-funded scholarship program of Turkey, which is called Turkey Scholarship Program, and we have specific programs for refugees or asylum seekers from around the world, from different countries, which I will elaborate more. I'm very pleased to be here to connect with esteemed experts and to share our experiences in providing higher education opportunities for refugees over the last 10 years. Giving shelter to forcibly displaced people and asylum seekers of various nationalities, Turkey hosts the world's largest refugee population for the 9th consecutive year. According to the latest figures, the number of Syrians under temporary protection is 3.2 million. With refugees and asylum seekers of other nationalities, this number is close to 3.5 million. As of last year, Syrians under temporary protection aged between 14 and 25 represent 20% of the overall Syrian population in Turkey. This means that we have thousands of refugees at the age of higher education, which is an unprecedented phenomenon. Turkish government has taken important step to ensure the transition of Syrian students in higher education and established suitable mechanisms. Providing degree equivalency and study transfers to Turkish universities, tuition fee waivers, and Turkish language classes that started in the beginning of the crisis were followed and supported by more comprehensive and joint scholarship programs. Additionally, degree programs taught in Arabic language, foundation year classes, vocational education options, counseling and guidance services, and social activities for healing disorder and psychological problems were also provided. YTB alone has directly provided 6,000 scholarships to Syrian students, while other stakeholders have further increased this number with an additional 3,000 with joint programs. With the efforts of the Turkish government, our close partner UNHCR, NGOs, and other stakeholders, university enrollment of Syrians increased to 58,000 in the last year, bringing the enrollment rate of Syrian students to 10% of the overall enrollment in Turkey, which is quite high compared to the 7% world average. We expect the international community to share the burden and continue financing the projects regarding the Syrians residing in Turkey. At the end of the day, a comprehensive political solution and establishment of security in Syria is necessary to create conducive conditions for the safe, voluntary, and dignified returns of Syrians. International community should take the matter of returns to their agenda and should aim at furthering the work on returns along with the political process. Together with facilitating the return of Syrians, we should also focus on the stabilization efforts to keep the people on the ground and prevent further waves of immigration from Syria. Due to our stabilization efforts in the opposition-controlled areas, more than 560,000 Syrians returned to these regions. When it comes to people fleeing from armed conflicts or wars in countries like Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, Myanmar, and Ukraine, Turkey again took relevant policy measures and provided access to higher education system and scholarship programs for students and enabled them to be enrolled at universities because these people usually get very limited options for higher education. And recently, Turkish higher education system and scholarship program has initiated new measures to support Palestinian students and academics in Turkey who are affected by or lost their families in the ongoing civilian massacre in Gaza committed by Israel. The second part of the question, that is the motivation behind these policies and programs to encourage young refugees to enroll at higher education institutions, is obviously related to Turkey's commitment to providing protection to human life, regardless of any nationality, religion, or ethnic background, and alleviating the refugee crisis that is felt at the global scale that we have never seen in history. We believe that we need to remove all barriers in the way of higher education because it is an important tool to make refugees feel as normal as other people and keep up with life. In the same way, inclusion in national education system supports social cohesion. Higher education is one of the best ways to allow young refugees to cope with vulnerabilities through acquiring recognized skills and becoming self-reliant. Lastly, and undoubtedly, higher education can contribute to the long-term socioeconomic development of countries. At the beginning of the crisis, that's why Turkish government perceived the importance of higher education for Syrians in terms of the potential of the youth to rebuild Syria after the resolution of the conflict. And that's my contribution for this part. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now, we do want to keep this session moving. And so to ensure that everyone's awake, we now have a video about the Recap Ref TVET project, which is a partnership with Bioforce, funded by the government of Monaco. And it provides technical training for refugees and links them to apprenticeships.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Fidèle Ibuka et je suis en stage au bureau régional du HCR Dakar dans le cadre de ma formation Bioforce. Je vous invite à me suivre dans mon bureau. Je suis née réfugiée en Tanzanie et je suis arrivée au Sénégal à l'âge de 3 ans et demi. Durant tout mon cursus scolaire, j'ai eu de sérieux problèmes administratifs et lorsque j'ai vu l'offre de bourse Bioforce en partenariat avec le HCR, je m'étais dit que c'est l'opportunité à saisir pour pouvoir réaliser mon rêve depuis l'enfance, de pouvoir intégrer le milieu de la solidarité internationale. Je travaille dans l'unité WOSH du bureau du HCR. Je mesure la chance que j'ai eue de ne pas avoir été traitée différemment par mes camarades de classe et mes enseignants, mes professeurs, à cause de mon statut de réfugié. Mais je sais que partout dans le monde, il y a d'autres jeunes comme moi qui sont traités différemment. Et chaque fois que j'ai eu une réussite dans ma vie, j'ai énormément pensé à ces jeunes, surtout à ces filles qui ont mon âge, qui sont de ma génération et qui n'ont pas pu avoir la même chance que moi. Surtout quand j'ai eu mon diplôme d'ingénieur de conception en génie civil et plus particulièrement après avoir fini ma formation en responsable au hygiène et assainissement à Bioforce.
And we are delighted to be joined by Madame Isabel Rosa Brunetto from the Principality of Monaco. Now, Monaco, as you are all aware, is a very small country, but very beautiful. And it's interesting to note that the approach that you have taken is to try and prioritize refugee training in parts of the world which don't often receive a lot of attention, such as West Africa. Could you give us your reflections on what difference that can make to young refugees to be able to acquire those skills that they need and to be able to move into meaningful employment?
Of course. Thank you, Duncan. Hello, everyone. First of all, let me point out that the Principality of Monaco is a really small-sized state, as mentioned. It could fit into Central Park. I don't know if you can figure out, but that's how small it is. Why do I mention this? It's because we have no further education in Monaco. After the graduation from baccalaureate, we all have to study abroad. Donc, as a consequence, we wish we know very well the benefit from cross-border cooperation mechanism in the field of higher education. To go back to cooperation, I would like to mention that education ranks very high in our official development aid assistance. It's about 25% of all our financing. And the countries that receive this help are from Middle East, North Africa, and Africa. And you can figure out a triangle from Beirut to Dakar to Antananarivo. That's how we work. And we focus on a right-based approach and aim at ensuring access to inclusive, good quality education for the most vulnerable, and in particular for girls. When it comes to education, we know that refugees suffer a double burden. Not only is their schooling interrupted by their migratory journey, but once in the host country, they come up against many barriers, as we heard before. And Fidel's testimony that we have just heard is also a testimony of these barriers. The Principality has been actively involved in the socio-economic integration of young refugees, migrants, and displaced persons through education and the development of basic and professional skills. Monaco has been working with the UNHCR for many years, and this cooperation has highlighted a number of issues. Refugees face many difficulties to access the higher education of their choice in either their country or of asylum or elsewhere. Refugees often get involved as volunteers in projects aimed at them, particularly in the field of education. And 3/4 of refugees are hosted in low or middle income countries. Bearing this in mind, Monaco has elaborated the RECAPREF initiatives with the UNHCR and the Bioforce Institute. It was launched in 2022, and as Fidel illustrates, it enables refugees living in one of the countries of West and Central Africa to follow a post-baccalaureate course in the humanitarian field at the Bioforce Training Center in Dakar, Senegal. Students then receive support when entering the development and humanitarian sectors in their country of asylum or elsewhere as they do wish. Monaco conceived these initiatives as a way of opening up a university corridor for refugees, an additional route to higher education, to technical education. It is also a way of finding meaningful employment, meaningful jobs, Mr. Duncan, as you say, and Fidel said as well. The students at the Bioforce Center have been selected like any other student. That is on the basis of their skills and career plan. However, their personal journey enriches the exchanges with the teachers and their fellow students. It is a positive factor in social integration. In addition, the opportunity to follow the course in Dakar, Senegal, enables them to build up a professional network that will be a valuable asset in their career. A great deal of work is done by Bioforce and by Monaco to facilitate the integration of graduates. For Monaco, this initiative promotes self-reliance and positive representation of refugees. When you meet Fidel, what you hear is a talented young woman, and what you see is a civil engineer with a degree in water and sanitation, not a person in need of assistance. So we must destroy the long-going stereotype of a refugee being a burden on the host country. Refugees have ambitions, and it's their fundamental rights that we are promoting here because, and as Filippo Grandi once said, talent is universal, but opportunity is not. Giving refugees access to humanitarian and development work through higher education contributes to the objective of the Global Compact for Refugees. Monaco has registered this initiative as a pledge in 2022, and we will keep our commitment going for the years to come. Yet this initiative is really catching on with such a large number of applications that we are unable to process them, simply because a lack of resources. I therefore invite all organizations that wish to share the project to get in touch with either our delegation or Bioforce or the UNHCR to turn these pilot initiatives in a full-scale program. Remember, Fidel and her friends are counting on you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You may have noticed that my control of the panel is gradually slipping as they get further away from me. So I think we'll probably have 20 or 30 minutes by the time we get to the end. In a few moments' time, we will be inviting a number of interventions from the floor from organizations who are making pledges. But just before that, I will invite Sajad Malik from the UNHCR to address us. Just before I do that, I should perhaps describe a little bit of how I came to be involved in this whole process at all. So Times Higher Education has been around for about 50 years. And in 2018, we started to focus on how universities could play a role in addressing the Sustainable Development Goals, another 2030 target. We've got a lot of 2030 targets, which are really quite challenging these days. But when we did that, one of the things that became apparent is that if we are to have a sustainable future, then it needs to be an equitable, sustainable future. And that means that we need to recognize and support refugees and refugee students in particular in higher education, because if we don't do that, we can't be equitable. And we also have to recognize that the sad reality is that climate change is likely to increase both the direct and indirect number of refugees we have to deal with. Direct because of the impact of climate change on vulnerable countries such as Bangladesh, that will inevitably displace people, but also secondary challenges as we see international tensions rise over increasingly scarce resources. All of this means that the role of higher education in supporting refugees becomes, if anything, even more crucial. Because of this, my team have been working with the 15 by 30 team. We are pledged to support by publicizing, and also because I'm a data guy and everything I have to do has to do with data in some way or other. That's a warning in case any of you want to engage me in conversation later, by the way. Also in supporting building out a data framework, because one of the challenges when we think about refugees generally and refugee students in particular is that we have very little data on where they are and the challenges they are facing. But with that, I'm going to turn to you, Sajad, and briefly, I might remind you, given that the UNHCR, particularly at the moment, has so much to deal with, there are crises all over the world, these crises aren't going away. How is it that we can make higher education a focus? Why should higher education be a focus for UNHCR?
Thank you, Duncan. Yeah, they're competing priorities. And if it's even in the last day and a half now and another day and a half to go, you'll see so many areas that we are discussing and looking at the priorities that are actually competing with each other. And in the end, it's what we're looking for partners who are specifically focusing on these areas, and I'll come back to it in the end. So we view in UNHCR higher education as a conduit to self-reliance. And that's what Bernice highlighted, that in its transition from learning to earning, from dependency to self-reliance, and to be able to envision a future where they can make powerful choices for themselves. And we heard Bernice's story. There are close to 300 participants in GRF, students from different parts of the world, who many of them are in the room as well, who are sharing their stories. And I'll just quickly, so that I don't lose time here. This morning at a high-level roundtable at the Embassy of Denmark, we had a student who moved to a refugee camp when he was an infant, 1 year of age, and then now he has three kids of his own, still living in that camp, still a refugee, wishing for the day to go back home. But what he did, he said, what brought him through all these challenges is his education. He did his primary in the camp, and then he went for secondary and then found tertiary education, graduated. And in this meeting, he highlighted those the opportunities, and he said, I got those opportunities, and I'm here today, and I can take care of my families. Many are out there who do not have those opportunities. I think that was that changed the discussion in that room with all the diplomats and experts sitting in that room to see how do we look at the program going forward. Now, without the legal framework, policy space, and civil documentation, and then for refugees to develop skills and labor market, we cannot realize the dream of self-reliance. And we want them to be self-reliant, taking care of their lives and livelihoods and their families and their future and of their children. If it will only happen if the legal framework is there, if the policy domain is there. The other thing is to highlight that the vast majority of refugees who need access to education, this is an event where we're focusing on tertiary education, but the data on primary education is very low as well in refugee hosting situation. It further drops when it goes to secondary education. And here we are saying tertiary. Can we please reach 15% at least tertiary education? Is this what we see for our own kids? No, it's different in different countries. But here the challenges are enormous that we're looking at in that sense. Many countries are sharing their meager resources. These 75% of refugees are hosted in neighboring countries. And they're mostly low-income countries or middle-income countries, struggling for their own children to go through education. And then we have refugee children joining. And then Turkey, one good example, opening up space, universities, but there are many other countries in this low-income country group that they are sharing their meager resources. And that's the support that we're looking for. How do we support them rather than creating parallel structures, which are often more expensive than the national systems? How can we support national systems, universities that can take on more students? Rightly pointed out, the data is not there. The data also for human development, how education helps human development. And we have seen refugees who are graduated and have gone through university education, the human development indicators improve quite dramatically in that. Improving infant and mother mortality, gender equity in communities, household economic stability. There are many factors that play in part in this conversation now. Now, 15 by 30 is just a roadmap. I wish we could talk about a larger number, but right now we are at 7%. And that 7% will only go to 15, we're saying by 2030. There are many targets for 15 by 2030, but for refugee education, we feel that's one investment that we need to make more. We have a very passionate team. We hope that there'll be more joining, Germany and other countries who have been running DAFI program. And we just heard one example where more partners are needed to join what the initiatives are. Universities need to open up. And my colleague here will be talking about connected education. That's one avenue that needs to open up more, that we can multiply these opportunities for children. And I can see a few in the room who have gone through education, being refugees, and then coming out on the other side, really, really powerful community members and taking care of their lives and livelihoods. Thank you, Duncan.
Thank you very much. We're now going to take our first series of interventions from the floor once the microphone is ready. So please, can you come up to the microphone? Can you introduce yourself? And I'm afraid these are scripted interventions for the floor. I wish we had time for questions. Maybe if we get to the end, we will have, if our esteemed panelists stick to time, of course. But our interventions from the floor, can you come up, introduce yourself, and explain what your pledge is? It says here I've got to give you 2 minutes and then cut you off, although exactly how I'm meant to cut you off, I have no idea. So If we could start with Kazakhstan, please.
Thank you very much. Dear Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants of the Global Refugees Forum, it is a pleasure to welcome you. I am honored to participate in the plenary session of the Global Refugee Forum. Allow me to inform you about the measures taken and new commitments on education of refugees in Kazakhstan. The legislation of Kazakhstan ensures the right of all children, including refugee and asylum seekers children, to receive preschool, primary, general, secondary education on a free basis, as well as higher and postgraduate education and a cumulative basis. In that regard, from next year, we plan to start work on a new commitment to provide refugees with higher education free of charge. To fulfill this obligation, the Ministry of Science and Higher Education of the Republic of Kazakhstan will establish a quota for admission of refugees under the scholarship program for higher education. Also, the Ministry of Science and Higher Education, together with Maksud Narikbayev University from 2024, will include a course on statelessness and refugees in its curriculum as a pilot project. From 2024, a quota of 10 places will be allocated annually for refugees out the 419 places provided for foreigners to study undergraduate programs within the framework of the scholarship program for higher education. The quota is annually provided by a protocol decision of the Republic Commission's establishment in accordance with the relevant order of the Minister of Science and Higher Education of the Republic of Kazakhstan. In conclusion of my speech, let me once again express my gratitude to you for your support in joint work to project in rights of refugees and asylum seekers. I'm sorry, my English. I'm sorry.
If we can now move on to the MasterCard Foundation.
Hello, everyone. Absolute pleasure to be here. My name is Karen Meyer. I'm the program head for refugees and displaced persons at MasterCard Foundation. And at the MasterCard Foundation, under our Young Africa Work strategy, we seek to enable 30 million young Africans to access dignified and fulfilling work by 2030. This includes refugees and displaced persons, or RDPs. Since the 2019 GRF, the foundation has expanded higher education opportunities for RDPs in our Scholars Program, invested in technical assistant partner to support our university network, delivered bridging programs to support more RDPs reach tertiary education, provided entrepreneurship support leading to greater transitions to work, and increased our investment in refugee-led organizations. And as one of the largest philanthropies supporting education in the world, today we pledge to strive toward 25% of all the foundation's higher education programs for young RDPs. We recently co-created a new program with African Higher Education Emergency Network, AHEEN, that will support RDP students, including teachers, into accredited higher education. AHEEN will also provide capacity support to host governments, They will include a rapid response mechanism, so recently displaced students may enter the AHIN network from their new location, and the network will work together towards recognition of prior learning. Based on the consultations of young people, including our Youth Advisory Committee, the foundation will continue to deepen investments in these spaces in Africa, including a pledge within economic inclusion found on the GRF site, and will do this by working alongside RDPs from design to implementation. Thank you so much.
And now from the International Labour Organization.
Good afternoon. My name is Christine Hoffmann from the ILO. Very happy to be here. The ILO is very happy to act as co-lead of the 15 by 30 pledge with a particular focus on vocational education and training. And very happy to hear the example from Monaco. So TVET includes apprenticeships, internships, work-based learning as well. Because TVET advances social justice, promotes decent work for refugees, other forcibly displaced persons and host communities, and hence is an avenue to livelihoods and career advancement for everyone. We're also pleased to announce another skills-related pledge together with Church Aid and UNHCR on inclusive TVET and skills development for self-reliance. As part of our informal steering committee, together with GIZ, we will convene roundtable meetings focused on refugee inclusion in TVET. We will conduct research to strengthen the evidence base on refugee and host community participation in TVET and skills development. And we have just 2 days ago launched a first meta-study research on the economic impact of TVET for refugees as part of the Education Forum, and we will engage in joint advocacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much for your pledges. It's great to hear them, and I hope that some of those have inspired people in the audience about things that they might be able to think about doing or adopting in their own organizations going forward. Now, yesterday I was lucky enough to attend a fringe event where we looked at some of the opportunities that networks of universities can provide, because networks allow universities to share experience, to share practice, and to hopefully overcome some of the challenges that they would face as individual institutions. And we're lucky enough to be joined today by Jonathan Becker, who leads a network of universities committed to promoting civic engagement and advancing open society. Now, Jonathan, can you explain how these ideas can impact the students who are facing this forced displacement conditions? And is it actually realistic to be able to do that and keep the concept of open society? And you also work with connected learning hubs. I'm really interested to find out more about how digital learning can play a role in this very challenging space.
Thank you very much. Bard College hosts 150 refugee and displaced students, primarily from Afghanistan, Syria, Ukraine, and Russia. Other members of the Open Society University Network, a global network of nearly 50 academic institutions, committed to the principles of open society, mutuality, and reciprocity, host hundreds more displaced students, and many OSUN institutions have made pledges this week. What Bard and OSUN do is most emphatically not do-gooderism. We are working with some of the most talented young people in the world who enhance learning of all of our students. We are extremely proud that last year, 2 Bard refugee graduates, an Afghan from our New York campus and a Syrian from Bard College Berlin, won Rhodes Scholarships, proving yet again that refugee students belong in the classroom. Bard and OSUN are committed to digital learning. Our efforts include supporting institutions in exile, like the American University of Afghanistan and Paramity University from Myanmar. Most important for today's discussion is our hubs for connected learning, situated in refugee camps in Kenya, Bangladesh, and Jordan. The connected learning model we deploy in the hubs is high touch. The hubs offer displaced students access to learning centers with connectivity for synchronous classes with professors from across the network, supported by on-the-ground refugee facilitators trained in student-centered pedagogy. We also offer so-called OSUN courses that enroll students from multiple institutions in small global classrooms, connecting refugee students so that they can learn with and from students from institutions across the globe, and allowing them to share their unique perspectives on pressing global challenges. Moreover, many of our teachers come from OSUN's Threatened Scholars Initiative, allowing displaced students to study with people like them, who better understand their circumstances and can offer unique support. Civic engagement is central to what we do. We believe in liberal education, which stresses the development of the whole person and fosters engaged citizenship. And by citizenship, I'm not speaking of legal status, but a sense of belonging to communities, local, national, and global. In particular, we support civic engagement projects led by students, which harness their idealism and produce real-world impacts. Refugee students in particular have initiated a diverse set of projects. For example, a Syrian student at Bard Berlin is developing a publicly funded campaign to support voter registration for so-called New Germans. Another launched the first Arabic language library in Berlin. One student at the Kakuma refugee camp leads a project that is archiving camp architecture at Kakuma and the Kalubaye settlement. 3 others in Kakuma have worked together to create and launch a refugee-led organization designed to use art and film creation to bring together youth from the community. Afghan students in particular across the network have been particularly active, offering English language and coding classes for girls in Afghanistan, creating an e-library to celebrate achievements of Afghan women, and tutoring programs for less fortunate refugees in countries where they now reside. In all, they lead more than 50 projects involving hundreds of student leaders and impacting nearly 10,000 students across the globe. These civic engagement projects help students learn, allow them to give back, and help them grow a sense of agency, building the self-reliance that Bernice spoke of so eloquently. Finally, OSUN also believes that colleges and universities should themselves be responsible civic actors and frontline responders, devoting resources, financial, intellectual, and reputational, to address pressing civic and humanitarian challenges. At OSUN, we have a slogan, "What we can do together that we cannot do alone." This includes refugee and displaced students as important contributors, as engaged citizens. It expresses the need for collective action and the type of commitment that we all need to do to reach the 15 by 30 goal. Thank you.
We're now going to share another short video that looks at some of the unique aspects of the Complementary Education Pathways program run by the Japanese government through the JICA.
Being a refugee is hard, but it doesn't have to be. I learned that after coming to Japan. My name is Anas Hijazi, a Syrian refugee who came to Japan through the JISR program, Japanese Initiative for the Future of Syrian Refugee, organized by Japan International Cooperation Agency. I work now as a full-time consultant and do some work for refugees. So escaping one's country and severing your own roots can be a detrimental thing in one's life, mainly because it hinders one's ability to think and to see hope and dream. However, coming through the JISR program was very advantageous for me because it gave me the chance to think freely for the first time in a very long time. And I was able also to achieve my professional aspirations. But more importantly, I felt that I was respected and in control of my life. For me, the JISR program is just much more than a chance to study, because it provided me with a chance to study Japanese for 1 year and also prepared me for the job market by doing comprehensive job hunting activities. And for others, it was maybe the only chance for them to come to Japan with their families, being the only program that can do that. So all in all, I felt that I was empowered to sustain life. And not only that, but to exceed and to follow my own dreams. But above all of this, my dignity was protected. The dignity that I lost, the second I became a refugee, I was able to gain back. and I was able to say finally that I feel home. Home here, where I wake up every day happily and being able to contribute back to this country. So how about together today, here? Instead of thinking about solutions for refugees marking us as the problem, we can sit together and think about the millions of people and their skills. How can we utilize that and provide a win-win situation for the host communities? So we are not the issue, we are the solution. Thank you.
And we are, And we're joined today by Ms. Nakazawa, who has been leading the Japanese Complementary Education Pathway Program since its inception back in 2016. Nakazawa-san, it takes a range of partners to put together any kind of pathway program. Can you explain to us why more of us should be building out this kind of alternative pathways into education?
Okay, thank you, Duncan. My name is Irene Nakazawa from Japan International Cooperation Agency, Japan, and it's a great honor for me to be here today. Thank you. To answer the question, Mr. Anna's video already explained clearly about our future of the program, but let me highlight some of our key observations from our GESEL program. The program, which provides Syrian refugees with opportunities to study in Graduate School of Japanese University in cooperation with UNHCR. So I believe the most important thing is that providing educational opportunity, the pathway is that it's not just about opportunity to study, but it comprises of comprehensive support to the refugees to find the career opportunities upon graduation. Our GESEL program is not only an educational program, but a program to support the starting a whole new life in a new place. We value long-term sustainable perspectives for refugees to become self-reliant and support themselves and their families. This approach could lead a win-win situation, as Anna said, for both refugees and host countries. Refugees could be our solutions. By the way, their status of residence in Japan is students, not refugees. Now, I would like to share some key features of the program. First, one of the most unique aspects is, in addition to supporting students, the support for the family is also provided in our program. For spouse and children to come and live in Japan with students. Some of the students with families said that was the reason why they chose to participate in this program, because they want to educate their children in Japan. Secondly, we also consider the significance of host country's language, which is Japanese, very unique language. We provide opportunity to study, to learn Japanese, which is very essential for life and employment in Japan. Thirdly, the support for job hunting. Generally, it is not easy for foreigners to find employment in Japan, which is language and the system are very different from other countries. And this is not a special case for students with refugee backgrounds. But you can imagine how hard it is for them to do their research work, study Japanese, and do job hunting, and sometimes care for their families all at the same time. However, their great efforts and motivations and comprehensive supports involving government and universities and pro bono support team, with custom-made assistance for each student. That all makes it possible. So let me delve deeper to some success stories from the program. In Japan, we have some challenging social issues to tackle, such as declining birth rate and increasing elderly population, shortage of human resources, and digitalization, among those. Students with refugee backgrounds have proven that there are possibilities to solve such issues together. For example, shortage of the resources in the IT field. Recently, a certain number of Syrian students, graduates are working as IT engineers and contributing to our society. Not only that, but some of them play important roles to contribute to Arab countries too. One of graduates currently working as operating officer in a company where he actively engaged in a project of job creation in Syria by outsourcing work offered by Japanese companies to engineers living in Syria. In addition, he is also participating in a JICA technical cooperation project for promoting the AI ecosystem in Jordan. He is surely achieving our program aim, being a bridge between Syria and Japan. Jiso means a bridge in Arabic. So the educated students with refugee background are highly motivated to contribute to the Japanese society as much as they wish to do so for their own country. The fact that 48 graduates out of 56 who completed the master's program successfully gained employment in Japan after graduation, that clearly shows that they are important human resources and they achieved self-reliance in Japan. Finally, I believe that considering students with refugee background as a solution by implementing education pathways provide invaluable opportunities for the host countries. I am glad to share our experiences and achievements, and I hope it can encourage other countries to develop and expand educational opportunity for refugees and their families. Thank you.
Of course, all of this requires the active participation of universities. And if there's one thing I've learned talking to universities in countries all around the world, is that our governments expect universities to do more and more and more with less and less and less in the way of resources. So it's important that we actually talk to people from universities who are experiencing the pressure of, on top of all of the other burdens that they're being asked to deal with, also supporting and hosting refugee students. Professor Tedesse, your university hosts refugees, and I'm giving you a really easy question. Please don't just say no to this, by the way. Do you feel enough is being done to support universities like your own who are under pressure to support more refugees? Right, so more than just a no, please, for that. And what can other bodies do, whether those are other universities, whether those are funders, whether those are non-government organizations? What else can be done to support universities in this critical work?
Thank you very much for the question. My answer is normally no. But it is not, the universities are not supported enough. No does not mean they are not supported absolutely, but speaking in relative terms. So from my experience, universities are not supported enough. Let me speak about the background of university activities from my experience from Addis Ababa University. Universities provide teaching and learning to refugees. They host refugees, providing scholarships, often limited and partial scholarships. Of course, this is owing to their financial constraints. Universities are also doing research to ensure evidence-based advocacy and enhancement of rights and welfare of refugees. My university, for example, in partnership with development partners, grants scholarships, principally by waiving tuition fees to dozens of refugees every year. This is true for many other Ethiopian public universities. Although many might have limited resources, as long as refugees come with the external assistance, external resources, those public universities are open to refugees. And again, my university is part of the Demelo chair scheme. The initiative, a global network of universities working closely with UNHCR to enhance teaching, research, and outreach related to refugees and forced displacement. Through collaboration and resource sharing, this initiative is submitting a pledge you heard earlier at the plenary. Professor Liliana spoke about the pledge by the DEMELO chairs, 16,000 refugee admission and around 300 scholarships, principally by Brazilian universities. This would help the 15 by 30 agenda. Of course, there are a number of other activities as well, particularly in connection with community outreaches. In Ethiopia, for example, there is one important pillar for universities. In addition to research and teaching, we do extensive community engagement to provide services to refugees, legal aid, counseling, and so on and so on. So despite such high level of commitment from universities, the support universities obtain, I feel, this is my personal opinion, to increase enrollment of refugees in higher education, as well as research and outreach services, remain very limited. Universities, particularly those from the global south, where my university belongs as well, they have limited resources. They often struggle for covering their regular and basic expenses. Therefore, additional resources are needed from government as well as partners, such as bilateral, multilateral donors and development partners as well, to increase the enrollment of refugees and particularly enrollment in tailored programs that would enhance the choice of career and opportunities for refugees. So development partners could extend grants to universities, sponsor scholarships, fund promising proposals, and so on and so on. There are a number of modalities that could be employed, and universities are willing to show the options and the alternatives to those modalities. Of course, support from governments might be in the form of increased budget for public universities, so that the universities grant full or partial scholarships. If such partnerships are assured, universities are able to do more to fulfill global commitments, increasing enrollment, including by designing programs tailored to refugees and host communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We're now going to take 3 more interventions from the floor. If I can start with Denmark.
Thank you so much, and so pleased to be here. So I'm Lotte Marchand, the State Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Denmark. And it is indeed super inspiring to be here. We were, from the Danish side, part of the DAFI from the very beginning, from the Global Refugee Forum in 2009, have been a key partner ever since. It's been an incredibly journey, and I think the sort of personal stories that are coming across both this morning, as was alluded to at the breakfast meeting at the Danish mission, but also just that we hear now, is really sort of gives the energy for continuing moving forward. Because education it's a key to taking the future in your own hand. It's about empowerment, but it's also about being a role model to your family, to your communities, and to providing a way for refugees into hope and a future. So refugee education is increasing in priority to Denmark. We're working with Education Cannot Wait. We are working with Global Partnership for Education, and recently just announced a cooperation with the Legal Foundation and the Grundfos Foundation, two private foundation from Denmark, where we will increase refugee education in Ethiopia. But towards the end, I'm happy to announce that Denmark will give an additional pledge of 20 million Danish kroner over the 2 coming years for DAFI. That amounts to 2.6 million USD. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We now have, and I hesitate to say this is the longest acronym I've ever come across, IASGHEHDC. Oh, go on, use the acronym.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca Granado from the Open Society University Network, and I'm going to read the statement by this acronym. So, recognizing the critical role of higher education in addressing the challenges faced by displaced and marginalized populations, there's a clear need for better coordination to ensure that higher education systems and institutions can respond effectively in emergency contexts. The first step in filling the gap in higher education coordination in emergency settings is developing a framework for engagement of the higher education community, systems, institutions, stakeholders, and students from the earliest stages of an emergency. We, the representatives of DAAD, IIE, UNHCR, Times Higher Education, the Open Society University Network, the Association of Commonwealth Universities, the CLCC, and Nexus 3.0, commit to leading the establishment of a global interagency steering group on higher education in humanitarian and development contexts. Building on a first planning meeting, which was convened in May of 2023 at the Times Higher Education Global Sustainable Development Congress, hosted by the King Abdullah University of Science and Technology in Saudi Arabia, the core group will take strategic steps leading to the establishment of the Interagency Steering Group in 2024. Thank you.
Can I now call on Duolingo?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Emma McLeavy-Weeder. I direct the Duolingo English Test Access Program. Some of you may be familiar with our products. We are a tech company founded by immigrants who have a deep mission that really believe in providing free and accessible language learning products to learners across the world. While we've been involved in refugee language training for about the last decade, in 2021, we decided to up the ante and announced a first of its kind partnership with UNHCR to provide a bespoke university advising program for a cohort of refugee students across the world. So today we're super happy to announce that 20 of these students are studying at world-class universities across 6 different countries and received $1.3 million in financial aid and scholarship money. As we're thinking about moving forward, one of our pledges is to commit to continue to support and grow our DET and UNHCR Access Scholars Program. We'll expand our work on capacity building with local UNHCR offices, promote refugee access to higher education with our university partners, and champion public-private partnerships that support better access to tertiary education for refugees. Thanks very much.
Can I now call on the Global Student Forum?
Hi, my name is Jacob Lesius, and I'm here on behalf of the Global Student Forum. The Global Student Forum, with our 197 member organizations from 127 countries, recognize that refugees far too often are excluded from education. And when they access education, they are left on their own. Alone in a new country, they navigate new customs and unforgiving bureaucracies. As a global student movement, we pledge to be advocates for refugee access to education, to be advocates for the recognition of prior learning, and to speak up for this far too often forgotten group of students. We pledge to be a student movement for all students, celebrating and centering the voice of refugee students. We pledge to be partners with student refugees and their organizations across the world. We stand firm in our belief that our partnership with the Tertiary Refugee Student Network will lead the way in our effort for truly inclusive education and meaningful student life. Thank you.
I'm so sorry that we can't take questions from the floor at the moment, but please do come up and talk to our panelists at the end. Now, we're approaching the end of today's session, and I am going to ask, I have forewarned them, by the way, this is not a sudden surprise on the panelists. I'm going to ask the panelists to reflect in 20 seconds or so. Any bets on how likely that's going to come in? 20 seconds or so each on what they've heard today, and particularly if there is something that stands out that they've heard from one of the other presenters or from one of the interventions from the floor. To make this fairer, we've got a fairly randomized list of people, but I am going to finish with you, Bernice, because I think it's important your voice is the last one we hear on this point. So I'm going to start. And the thing that has impressed me, firstly, is the amount of commitment that we've seen a range of very different approaches from different people. But that the thing that concerns me most is that we have a need for consistent and strong funding to back this all up. Because at the end of the day, if we have great programs, but we can't fund them, if universities can't get the support they need, then I worry that we won't be able to deliver the numbers that we're looking for. So it's a plea to all funders, whether those be governments, whether those be I can't even say that word, philanthropists, or others, please do come forward and support these actions. And I'm going to move on. And Isabel, your name is first on my list.
Thank you, Duncan. Well, more than just wrap up, I would like to focus on how crucial it is to keep an eye on gender balance when we do these programs, to ensure that refugee women do have the same access to higher education. We learned yesterday that from the Nansen award-winning Ibrahimi that a single book can make the difference. It made the difference for the girl he met, and she became a nurse, and she's planning to be a doctor. And I was really impressed by this testimony. It's important for the women themselves, but also because through them, we ensure that they be eager to give to their children the same opportunity to access education. And hopefully we create a virtuous circle. That's my idea.
Thank you very much. Murat.
Thank you. Thank you, Duncan. In my closing reflections, I would like to underline 2 points. First of all, refugee issue has always been considered as a temporary condition, but now we understand that it's a mass global phenomenon that will have long-term effects across the globe. And no matter what we call them, they are now at the very core of national and international agenda. So more joint action is needed to support them. And global economic crisis, overall unemployment, weakening international response may even reverse, unfortunately, the progress that we have achieved so far in various sectors, including higher education. And secondly, I'm absolutely astonished at the ignorance by Western governments of humanitarian crisis and civilian massacre in Gaza. Officials of international organizations are stating that humanitarian operation is collapsing in Gaza. And nothing can justify the killing of more than 18,000 people, majority of whom are women and children. I think we cannot turn away from this. While some states are becoming more responsive to humanitarian action, some other states are blocking the efforts to protect innocent civilians. The use of veto at UN Security Council is very shameful, I think. And I believe, lastly, it is the responsibility of all countries and all relevant organizations to take action to stop this tragedy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Tadesse.
Well, okay. Starting yesterday, I personally heard lots of commitments from states as well as private and other organizations. My sincere belief is all the commitments are sincere to be followed by implementation. Why I'm saying this is I feel like some commit certain commitments, but the commitments might not be sincere, and I hope I hope we are able to hold them to account to their words and commitments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Sajad.
Yeah, thank you very much. I won't be able to thank you again, Duncan. So let me thank you as well for excellent facilitation. Maybe 4 quick points. One is on the need for a legal and policy space. I think that we will continue working towards that. It's part of our protection solutions mandate. That's what we really need to strive for. And we know that higher education prepares young people to be more knowledgeable, to be able to stand up for their rights, to be able to then be productive members of the community. And that starts with the civil documentation, as Bernice also highlighted. So we'll continue working towards that. And then one key message we take away with us. Second, more partners. It's a massive task and cannot be done alone. So thank you, Denmark. Thank you, Monaco. Thank you, Germany, for being a resilient partner of DAFI program for the last 30 years, but many more others are joining us. But we also want to see private sector. We want to see development partners, Vodafone, Grundfos, Duolingo. There are many others who are beginning to join this, which is good to see this happening. So it's not one area that we look at that. And the third is, for us, 15 by 30 is just a start. I hope next refugee forum, when we are there, they will say, oh, it's done, it's achieved. Let's move on to the next one. So this is the spirit. This is what we work at. And we want to have many more students in the room, elsewhere, in all fora, in their countries, in their communities, who are there with this education, which we want them to be having them in their displacement. It's being refugees is, well, there are reasons for that, not to be discussed here, but they should be given the right to have that education. Thank you.
Nakazawa-san.
Okay, thank you, Duncan. And also, I want to say thank you for Anes again for showing his great motivation, and also he's here today. And I can see the achievement of our program here. It's very touching for me, actually. For me, I feel that's the sharing the different experiences and achievements are very important. Like here, I learned a lot from other countries, but unfortunately not a lot of Asian countries here. But to share those things is very important to achieve the 15 by 30, because learning each other is very important to the program, make the program better. As Duncan said, and maybe the part Jonathan also said, the one can't do everything, but everyone can do something. So also I hope this the scholarship program, the education pathways, is also in other countries can develop for refugees with families too, because that will lead the reducing children out of school in the future, because they can go to school. They can go to school in Japan. They can go to school in the host countries. So that also important to include the families too. Thank you very much.
Philip.
So what I took away from this session was that refugee students especially, are definitely not a burden to society, but rather beneficial to society. And likewise, several of the speakers stressed the importance of self-reliance, which obviously comes through education, but very important in this regard, definitely is the way to employment. Because once the graduates find adequate employment, they are not depending on others. They are not depending on external sources, but they themselves can live the life they want to live and thereby contribute to society in a meaningful way. And in my opinion, this does not necessarily need to be restricted to going back to the people's home country or to their staying in their host country, but it can and must also include avenues to Western countries such as Germany that are actually looking for skilled people. And I'm willing to explore this avenue in the next few years. Thank you.
And finally, Bernice.
I'll keep mine very short. There is a lot of hidden talent in refugees, but due to lack of funding, we cannot explore it. And I've heard all the pledges, and I'm actually excited. And I hope that by the next global refugee forum that will have thousands and thousands of refugees enrolled in higher education, and mostly women. Yeah, so I am excited. So 15 by 30 is what we are pledging for.
I'm terribly sorry. I missed someone out, didn't I? Jonathan, sorry.
I feel bad that Bernice is in closing, so maybe I'll.
We'll
turn to her
we'll resolve
again.
this. I will find a way to get
So
Bernice's to be the last word from the
exactly.
panel.
I think I'll adapt my statements. I have sort of two thoughts. One is sort of a complaint, and the complaint is about fellow American institutions. Bard College is a small liberal arts college, and there are multiple American institutions which have endowments the size of, mid-range countries, and they're not up here. And their partnerships that I think about TEDESA tend to be extractive and not mutual and reciprocal. And the responsibility that they should have, both for welcoming more students and also for having partnerships in countries that, as I said, are reciprocal and mutual and not extractive, is something which redounds with me here. The other thing is to remember why we're here. And Bernice and Anis are inspirational in that regard. For me, it's also incredible to see alums, Sana Mustafa from Asylum Access, a Syrian who graduated from Bard College in Annandale, Ehab Badoui from Project TU, who's in the back over there, who graduated from Bard College Berlin. Yesterday, Aisha Khuram, who moderated the first plenary, she's a student at Bard College Berlin from Afghanistan. And we should be constantly reminded of the capacities and contributions that these young people give. And I will leave with a hope, which is that at the next gathering here, it will be they who are representing the institutions and networks and not people like me. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, we are running slightly ahead of schedule, which I can only put down to the fantastic chairing that has happened today. And I've been asked by the organizers to say, if we have one or two people who are willing to make a pledge, ideally without having supported it through our organization in any formal way at all, but with lots of money behind it, then please do feel free to raise your hand. It doesn't have to be a money pledge, obviously. We have a pledge over there. Do come up to the microphone, please, because otherwise no one will hear your great pledge.
Hello. Oh,
Sorry, there was a tall person there, I think.
There. Hello, everyone. My name is Aret Garcia, and I'm representing Diálogo Intercultural Mexicano, DIME, a humanitarian organization from Mexico. This is our second time at the GRF, and since 2019 to 2023, we have enrolled 28 students from different parts of the world. So for this GRF, DIME pledges 50 refugee students from Central America, Afghanistan, and Syria will have the opportunity to access complementary pathways to Mexico and access higher education through our protection scholarship, the Habesha Project. This will ensure a safe pathway to Mexico, grant them access to international protection, foster autonomy and independence, and facilitate their access to different services in the areas of health, education, and employment. This wouldn't have been achieved without our coordination with the Mexican government, or ally that is very critical for us, the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants, USCRI, and of course, our civil society and a wide range of 21 universities that provide full scholarship to our students. Thank you so much.
A pledge? Is it a pledge? A pledge? We've got a pledge. Very, very quick.
Hello, everyone. My name is Fatima, and I am a Syrian refugee woman in the UK, and I work with an organization called Refugee Women Connect. My question is, I really appreciate everything that you're doing for refugees students, but what about asylum seekers? So as you know, they don't have the ability to access or enroll to the universities because they don't have status. And especially in the UK, you know the situation. So what is your support for them?
So I've spent a lot of my time over the last year apologising on behalf of the UK for crimes both past and present. So I will apologise once again for the incompetent unawfulness of my government, of which I'm not a part, so I'm allowed to say that. But who from the panel would like to address this in any way?
Sorry, we do one small thing, which is we welcome, I don't know who's listening to this, so I might get in trouble. We welcome students on student visas and then help them apply for asylum. And we've done that with all the countries we're talking about, and we're looking at it with other folk on how that can work. So we were willing one way or another, if people, we also waited. Many of the Afghan students we had went to the American University of Central Asia in Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan, where I was acting president until a few months ago. And there we worked with the US government to get them the P1 status, and then bringing them to the United States and allowing them to enter university. So these are the things that you're doing, which is either supporting them until they get there or sort of bending the rules to help people find a pathway to long-term success.
Thank you very much. Very, very briefly. Very briefly. And only because you raised your hand right from the very first minute.
السلام عليكم. أنا شلة الحسين لاجئة صحراوية من الصحراء الغربية. أود أن أشكر برنامج دافي. أنا student دافي. إضافة إلى ذلك حصل يعني درست مرحلة الابتدائية ومرحلة المتوسطة في مخيم اللاجئين الصحراويين الموجود بتندوف بالجزائر، وكملت مسيرتي الأكاديمية بجامعة قسنطينة. كان لدافي تأثير كبير في حياتي حيث كانت ساعدتني في العديد، وأود أن أشكرهم جزيل الشكر. شكرا.
Thank you. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for, but I did promise you that Bernice would be the last voice. So roll video.
Hi, I'm Bernice Kulakula, a student at the University of Cagliari.
I'm Mohammed. I'm 19 years old. I study software engineering in Jordan.
My name is Monica Maliv.
And today I'm going to show you a day of a serious student at the university. I enjoy starting my day with a cup of coffee. I often go up to the roof. It's a nice place to relax and enjoy the fresh air.
Let me tell you a bit about myself. I am a refugee from the Democratic Republic of Congo. I grew up in South Africa with a single mom, and she is my role model. When I received the Daffy scholarship and finally graduated, it meant the world to me.
My message for you all is that your past doesn't determine your future.
So on behalf of an amazing panel, can I thank you all for coming here today. If there's one more thing we'd ask you to do, the Global Pledge on Refugee Higher Education and Self-Reliance will be made at 3:15 in the plenary, if you would like to go there. But finally, from myself, Duncan Ross, and from all my wonderful panelists, thank you so much. Please join me in giving a round of applause to our great speakers.